leading each of the individual questions. I just wanted to give a little brief to some of the newcomers on BIM for housing and where we're coming from. George took over as chairman last May time, so just over a year. He wanted to challenge and change the perception of BIM as just a technology, make it more about information. You've probably heard him call it many times, better information management. Recognizing that different stakeholders require different information, we established 6 working groups: design, construction, manufacturing, operations, development, and advisory. They meet roughly once a month. Gary is on call, his operations group. So if they need better information about what gets installed, he can feed that through to the design group, which is led by Daz, who is also on this call, and to the construction group, where Maxine Beadle from Steve's Wilmot Dixon group is an active member. Now, to coordinate these actions, each of these groups send a couple of people to a work stream that collaborates with other experts to come up with solutions. These can then be adopted and implemented across the whole BIM for housing community. We've currently got 4 work streams: fire safety, obviously, of which this is a part, MMC, standardized data, and sustainability. We're shortly starting another 2, change management and digital O&M. So what we're going to accomplish today will feed through into several of the work streams and right up into BIM for housing and quite likely further. So to get started, let's look at the first question. We've had an amazing response, actually, and I've had to totally rejig this afternoon the way I was going to run this meeting. Hi, Steve. Because of the amount of input we've had from you already. So I think the best way of doing that is to actually put up the answers to questions we've already got. You can perhaps have a look through those and see what you think is missing. But before I do that, George, do you want to kind of like just give a little intro into the first question?
Yeah, sure. As far as the risks are concerned, what we're trying to do is
Am I the only person who's lost?
Yeah, sound? I can't hear you, George.
We've lost you, George.
Great. Okay. I don't know why that's the case.
I can hear you now, but it's sort of static.
No, I've not changed anything. Let me leave and come back again. Sorry. Can you carry on?
Okay. Yeah, I'll carry on. Just, do you want to put that first question up, share that first question so we can look at the answers we've got so far? There we go. So what risks do fire doors mitigate? Can everybody read that okay? Can anybody not read it?
I can see it fine on the screen, thanks.
Yeah, great.
All good.
Is there anything that jumps out at anybody that is missing? That's something that should be on there that we haven't included so far? Gary, how about you?
Anything I'd probably say, and you know, at the risk of trying to be a smart ass, I mean, a fire door is there also to be a door. Do we need to, for the purpose of what we are here, be talking about that side of things as well?
Give me an example of what you mean.
Acoustics.
Yes, so a fire door will
okay.
mitigate risks around fire, but it will also mitigate risks around security. I think someone just said it around acoustics, thermal performance. There's a number of other things. I guess it's just understanding, do you want that to be in scope, or are we specifically looking at the fire properties of a fire door?
I think we're looking at purely in terms of fire. Yeah, but I'm willing to be corrected. But I think from everything we've done and all the answers we've got so far, it's all around fire. Obviously, there are other risks, flooding, power outage, just as what else. But I think we're focusing on the fire side of things.
Yeah. So it's what fire risks.
But when George comes on, he'll probably correct me.
I think it's what fire risks do fire doors mitigate, and I think that would be that would just keep it narrow. Maybe if that was added.
Yeah, otherwise we're going to get too broad, aren't we? I think it's quite a broad subject we're covering anyway. Let's keep it very, very tight and focused if we can. Although I take your point, Gary.
Okay, in which case the only thing I'd probably add, and it's kind of in here, is the fact that obviously a fire door operates as part of a system, a controlled system, when it comes to the spread of fire, so it doesn't act in isolation. So it mitigates the risk of a system failure, not just an individual point failure.
Great point. Great point. Just can you type that in? Is that possible? Mitigates risk of system failure.
Yeah, because it doesn't work in isolation. Obviously, if the wall next to it burns through first, the door's useless.
Yeah, very, very good. Yeah, good one. Anybody else see anything glaring that's missing there?
No.
If you look at it purely, it depends on your audience. From a technical point of view, no, I don't think there's anything missing there. Gary's point on risk of a system failure, risk of failing the fire strategy is correct. But the top two, risk of smoke and spread of smoke and risk of spread of fire, yeah, absolutely. But when I think of the fire safety order, I always think of the first point of risk of minimising it. That's the whole point of the Act, to minimise risk of injury, etc., which comes from the risk of spread of smoke, the risk of spread of flat. So it depends whether the audience or the technicality version, what are we looking at in terms of the question? Is this for a technical audience, or are we reaching out to people here for which that would be a primary concern?
Well, the idea is that we're going to come out with a definitive guide for the industry, so it's the industry rather than individual persons. Obviously that affects individual persons, but it's not this isn't for householders, put it that way.
No, but I think in alignment, if you're looking at the fire safety order, in alignment, you would, for me, I would say risk of injury, harm, loss of life, etc. via the risk of spread of smoke.
Absolutely. Does anybody disagree with that?
No. Just one very quick question. Apologies for joining this 5 minutes late. Is the audience for this document and this description, is that the digital sort of BIM world?
The answer to that, Steve, is that what we're trying to do at the moment is feed back to the MHCLG what information is required, and the idea of this is to put this into data templates so that this information can be procured, but in the context of a particular risk. That's the way the HSE, and just building on what Paul was saying there, it is the individual tenants' requirements as well that we need to take account of, because at the end of the day, they're a very major stakeholder in all this, I think.
So, Paul, let's get Paul's point on the list then. Jess?
It's risk of injury, is it?
Injury,
your
harm,
point,
loss
Paul.
of life. Injury, harm, or loss of life.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant.
I could maybe chip in just a small point on the first one, spread of smoke. Having had practical experience of fires in a school, even without the smoke seal operating, because it never got that hot, good fitting fire doors minimise the smoke damage to other areas. So business continuity in a business sense, school continuity is greatly enhanced because the cleanup after a fire is significantly reduced.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, how would we phrase that?
Would that be risk of smoke damage?
I think that's
I think it's the risk of smoke damage and loss of facility as a consequence is reduced.
Risk of smoke damage and consequence.
Yeah.
Risk of smoke damage and consequence and subsequent consequences.
Yeah, loss of facility.
I hate to be pedantic, but is that not a follow-on from the risk of spread of smoke and fire? And it depends, again, how we're going to do this, because you could quite easily structure this to say you've got the risk to injury, loss of life, etc., as a result of the spread of smoke.
We need to lead to, because we're going to be going down a rabbit hole, aren't we, if we're not careful? We're going to be subdividing each of the answers into 50. What do you think, George?
I think it's better to capture the comment and we can then edit it later.
Make decisions on that after. Yeah, okay, fair point. Yeah. Okay, smoke damage.
The other thing I would say is that obviously we look at fire doors from the point of view of protecting against fire. But the other point that's been made to me clearly is that the door is there for security. And therefore...
no, that's what Gary's just said. And I said, oh, no, we're going off in a different direction here. And I said, but George, you probably put me right, and you have, haven't you?
Well, it's that, in fact, what I'd like to do at some stage, I've got a recording of that runs for about 2.5 minutes of a contractor, one of the guys from Lang O'Rourke, who just goes through all of the things that we expect a fire door to do. And it's probably quite a worthwhile thing to share.
I think would that be appropriate to do that now, George? Can we just go back to Gary though first, because he actually raised this point right at the beginning, and I said no.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, essentially, obviously, exactly what George just said. So a door is there to, offer a security gain, potentially a thermal gain, to have acoustic properties. So the risk around that obviously is a risk of security failure, a risk of poor thermal performance, or a risk of sound transmission.
I agree completely, but I think that's what does a risk as a front door mitigate. I just think, I wonder if the security side is not technical to the fire side, in the sense of the security is more the general, what is the purpose of a flat entrance door? And that's
that could apply to any door, not a fire door, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Hello, it's Danny White here. I'm sorry, I've just joined.
Hi, Daniel.
Hello. Listening, I've been a bit late because I had to do the school run. But when you're looking at security, approved document Q carries the same weight as approved document B. So when you're talking about security in apartments and flats, it is mandatory to have the security aspect in there.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, the other point I'd like to make is that what we're doing here as well is we're trying to set down what information are we going to ask from manufacturers, supply chains, etc., to inform the golden thread. Now, the golden thread, obviously, at the moment, the prism through which it's being viewed is fire, and to some extent as well structure. But there's other risks that we need to take account of, for example, environmental. So what information should we be capturing about sustainability and the carbon and things like that? And these are the sorts of things that we probably need to build in, not in this meeting, but we need to build in as attributes that need to be collected against a fire door. Sorry,
sure. But no, but George, let's talk about this meeting. Let's focus on this meeting and what we're going to try and get out of this meeting.
Sure.
Yeah. So
Again,
that being the case, what are we doing about Gary's thing with the security? Paul, who I agree with, sees that as something that is general to doors. Gary is thinking that it's, is it something that should be included in this discussion on fire doors? What do you think about that?
Yeah, Danny's also said that it's also critically important in the specification. So let's put it down and let's
put it down. Okay. Yeah. So
can I just make one point as well, that when we're talking about fire doors, there is a lot of emphasis on the fire element, but when we're talking about doors, we have to adhere to the other building regulations. We can't treat those in isolation. And this is where a lot of fire door manufacturers go wrong, because they're not aware of the other regulations. So what on your specifications?
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
It shouldn't just be just based around fire. And as somebody mentioned earlier, the thermal element is mandatory. Your acoustics are mandatory. If it's a new build, your security is mandatory. But also you have to think about what the client's requirements are as well. Because even though the approved document queue is only for new build, in social housing, where I deal a lot with, a lot of the clients want the added benefit of security going onto their fire door. And that's why some of the certification bodies have introduced like a dual certification document. So it means that the door that's been tested for fire is the same door which has been tested for security.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're putting security down there.
I put security, thermal, and acoustics.
Security, thermal, and acoustics. Does anybody disagree with that? Just can you put those down? Does that cover it?
There's one more we've missed out. Smoke.
We've got smoke at the top, haven't we?
Right.
Yep.
So security, thermal, and acoustics. Yeah? Is everybody happy with that one?
Also, depending on the location of the door, if it is an external fire door, like an open balcony where the doors need to be fire rated, they need to be CE or UKCA marked.
Danny, is that retrospective as well?
No, what happened was with CE and UKCA marking, people knew about it on the 1st of November 2016, and then there was a 3-year grace period before it became mandatory. So it became mandatory on the 1st of November 2019.
Right, so this needs to be included on our list, we're saying, are we?
It is mandatory.
Right, so tell just what it is and he'll type it.
Would it not then fall under number 2 with regards to how do we ensure it performs as required?
Yeah, as part of the CE marking or UKCA marking, you have to have.
Actually, sorry, Daniel, but that's actually correct, isn't it? We're looking at what risk do fire doors mitigate. Yeah, and we're not looking at what is the requirements in terms of compliance. That comes further down the list, I think. Daz, okay. You've got your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, just building on that. I think it does lead on to the next ones. In terms of that, I guess it's understood that pretty much every component of a building obviously has to meet all the building regs which are relevant to it. So you could just in the next question kind of identify. Look, I think we realised that none of the regs can be looked at in independent. They all have to be met. I think in terms of focusing on this roundtable about the fire aspect of a door is, I think, the only thing we can do. But yeah, obviously you can put in all the other building regs as well, Part M, Part K, all applied to a door. So a blanket saying it has to meet all the regs is requirement of a
performance. I think,
So I think we may be diverging a bit from the topic.
Yeah, let's not go. We're only on the first question. Let's not go down too many rabbit holes on this. Let's see what comes out as we move forward, because some of it will be covered. Then we can always come back having been informed of by discussions further on down the line. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so on this question, does anybody have anything they want to add? Or have we nailed it?
I think we should move on and then maybe come back at the end. But I think we should probably focus on the fire.
So we'll cut and print, as they say in the movies, and move on to question 2, Dad. George, did you want to do your risk introduction, or are we too late?
No. Sorry, not. Yeah, the risk one. I can just mention that we're within the Golden Thread initiative, which this is informing. What we've been working with the risk, the health and safety working group within that, and what they're doing is them and the compliance team who are looking at standards. You'll see here what they've been doing is they've been trying to classify risk under Uniclass, and the purpose of that is so that we've got an organized way. This is coming through from CDM. Can you see this okay? Can everybody see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you'll see here, these are the risks that Nick Nisbet and his team have been formulating. So what I'm looking to do is to say, if we can take the risks, if we can describe them in this sort of standard way, I'm going to feed these back into this group for us to then they're actually talking to MBS about feeding this back into Uniclass itself. So I thought that would be worth just mentioning.
George, when's it appropriate if you do that 2.5-minute video, Langerote one?
Yeah, I could probably do that now. Yes.
Do you want to do it now, or do we want to start the second question? Is it relevant to the second question?
Well, it's about the asset information, so I think it probably
now.
So let me find the darn thing.
Sorry, your sound is very bad, George.
Right. I'm having a real problem, aren't I? When you say it's bad, do you mean you can't hear me, or it's distracting?
Yeah. So I may have to ignore you.
I think it might just be bit of feedback, because it may be that we all need to unmute, I guess, as much as possible.
Yeah, so George, you're going to do the video now, yeah?
Yes. I need a second.
Okay, cool. Oh, Wendy, you got your hand up.
Yeah, it was just to say that I'm going to have to disappear soon because I've got a meeting with a lawyer. But something that somebody's just said about procedures, having now read the draft document BS 8644, there is quite a few changes to legislation now coming into place when it comes to the European standards. It's been got rid of because we're no longer part of Europe.
Okay. Yeah.
So
right,
I don't know if people
have...
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, Wendy is part of my team. She's a colleague of mine from the Icefire portfolio, who does work for Active Plan and others with a specialism in health and safety and fire. She will actually be leading the group that puts together the outcomes of this and other meetings that we're having, roundtables we're having over the next few weeks, just to say, so you know who she is. Okay, Wendy.
No, that's what I was, that was really all, is that I don't know how many people have actually read and digested the draft version of the BS 8644 -1, I believe it is. It is worth reading because there's quite a lot of pertinent information when it comes to procedures and standards that are now going to be changing due to Britain leaving the EU.
Cool.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Right, so you're off now, Wendy.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that. So when you get on to standards, you can bear that in mind. But yes, sorry, I can't hang around. Lawyers don't like waiting.
Don't worry, so, it's all recording. You're going to see it all many times, I'm sure, when you're doing your writing.
I will do. Thank you ever so much. Nice meeting you all. Bye.
Take care.
Shall I play this now?
Yep. Are you sharing your screen, George?
No.
We lost him.
Can't see anything, George, or hear anything.
Are you there, George?
An audio.
Oh, it's an audio. Oh, sorry. Right. Okay. Right. Yeah, we can't hear anything either.
Oh, you can't hear.
To install it, it needs to be
No,
on.
we're not hearing anything. No.
Did you share system audio when you joined?
I did.
Okay. No, we can't hear anything yet.
I'm very sorry. I've got include computer sound, which is system audio, and it's not come through. So sorry about that. I think press on, Richard. Let's go to the.
Okay, let's press on. Just let's get question 2 up. There we go. George, do you have an intro for this?
I think just crack on, Richard.
Right, let's get going. Okay, now this is, if you scan through that, this is a big one. What information do you need to know about a fire door to ensure it performs correctly? And there's a lot here. Just, you want to scroll slowly down. Yeah, we've got loads. So, have you had a chance to look at this? We sent it out earlier on. You possibly haven't. Shall I? What's the best way of doing it? Shall I go through them all one by one? Is that the best way?
I think say here, Richard, this is a consolidation, isn't it, of the.
It's a right. This is a consolidation of the 5 or 6 question answers that we had through. So pretty much everything that people have sent through to us are on this page. Obviously, there was some duplication which we've taken out, and a few little bits I've twiddled with just to make it more contextual. But it's all there. But there's a lot of it, isn't there? We weren't expecting this amount, actually. So I don't know if the best thing is for you to take 2 minutes out and read it and then come back. What do you think? What does anybody think?
I think that makes sense.
I think it's worth going through it, taking a couple of minutes to read it and come back, in my opinion. But
yeah, can you post this document onto the chat?
Yeah.
And then if everybody takes 2 or 3 minutes out, when you've read it, put your hand up on the little button so I know you're ready to continue. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I could just throw in two pennies now. For me, I tried to simplify it and say, as a landlord, I want to know it's compliant. The standard that was installed to you was correct, and the baseline parameters are from a compliant installation to be able to inspect against it in the future. So, if that is if all this is the bits of that, but ultimately, I need to know it's legal. I need to know it's up to date, and I need to know how to test against that standard in the future when it gets inspected on a quarterly basis. So, if they're the constituent parts, but let's read it and come back. I think I was trying to probably be a bit too simple and dreaming about my.
Well, no, you're not.
Inspection standard.
No, you're not at all. Actually, no, for yourself, that's exactly right. We're trying to put something together that includes what the requirements that every stakeholder needs from conception through end of life. Okay, so send that. Have you put that out, Jess? Is that there now?
Yeah, if I can just put a little.
Daniel,
bit...
do you want to speak? Daniel, you've got your hand up. Do you want to speak?
Yeah.
Ready?
I think it was Luke just made a point, and I think it was incredibly valid. And I think that the information that we've got in front of us is, from a compliance point of view, is overcomplicating things. And the reason I say that is that if you are looking to do things properly, you should be looking at third-party certified door sets under a fire door manufacturing scheme. So therefore, what that means is what they put in for the fire test and what is written up in their extended field of application is really what can be used. So they will be using CE-marked hinges, they will be using the correct letterboxes and everything like that, because otherwise they'd lose their certification. And I think that in a lot of specifications, this is where they get it wrong, because they only look at certain elements and not looking at the whole thing in the system as a complete thing.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, I think the point is, Danny, that yes, from a compliance perspective, I'm sure you're right. Yeah, but what we're trying to do here is do more than just simply referring to a British standard or a particular specification. What we need to be doing from let's say, for example, somebody's an FM and they need to buy a new fire door to replace that existing one. Yeah. Now, in practice, that will go to somebody in the procurement department, and they won't be able to read and understand a fire strategy. They certainly won't know enough about which British standards and how to interpret those British standards. Now, you might say that is, that's something that's an issue that everybody should be competent. But in practice, what I think we need to be doing, and this is the whole point about the golden thread, it's the weakest link in the chain that we need to be addressing. We need to know, for example, and I'll show you an example a little bit later, of I've got a specification from a door manufacturer, and what they're basically saying is that the door closers are compliant because they will perform to this level. But I'm told by a number of asset managers and FM managers that the speed with which door closers is set according to the tenant and the circumstances of that particular scenario. Now, that information, I believe, is an example of something that needs to be captured, because otherwise, how does the person that's coming along, and you're far more experienced than me in this, but what information do we actually need to capture specifically about an individual door that we can work with?
I think the word that you mentioned was procurement, and I think that is where a lot of the issues start from. And the reason I say that is that, supposing if you haven't got a robust specification, you will get rubbish being supplied to you. Procurement will look at two prices, one's 500, one's 1,000, and they'll say, we'll go with the 500 one because they've said it meets all the requirements, where in fact it doesn't, because the specification was wrong in the first place. So if you can get a specification which is correct, then it means that only the door manufacturers who can achieve the requirements would be allowed to provide that door set to the building.
Yeah, Daniel, just remember, the purpose of part of what we're doing is to inform the MHCLG for forthcoming legislation and rules. We can't say, well, just abide by their rules if we haven't helped set them.
But I think the question itself is a bit broad. I think the question. Hi, Steve here from Wilmot Dixon. I think the question is very broad at the moment, which kind of explains the level of detail that we've all gone into individually, because we've probably all read the question slightly differently.
Sure.
And I think if the question was, what evidence do you need to evidence that a fire door complies, is one question. What information you require to procure a door frame or a new fire door set is a different question. And I think we've, just looking at it now, I think there's a couple of different questions, because one is what evidence do we need to ensure that what's installed complies, and the next one is going to be what do we need to, what evidence do we need to have to ensure to demonstrate that the door's been maintained and continues to comply. And the next one, which is probably quite an easier question, is what information is required to procure a replacement. So it might be that there's three questions here in this one.
I agree. This is specification. This is specification. So Luke's point is absolutely correct, but the question would be, what information do you need to know as a fire safety manager or compliance manager that this door is compliant? This for me is more in depth and says, what specification do you need? What do you need in your specification for installation and procurement? And then the procurement is a separate question. I think this is purely specification, this one.
Well, I set the question.
Sure.
I set the question, and it isn't just about specification. That's actually the whole point. The point really is, what information would anybody that needs to do anything to a fire door, that means either design with it or buy it or install it or maintain it. So the purpose of the exercise, I think, is for us to ensure that all of those different parties have got the information that they need. And then, Paul, what we need to then do is make sure that the information that Danny needs, for example, is definitely there and can be delivered to him. The fact that somebody else in procurement or somebody else in FM needs something else is important to be able to do.
I agree.
Okay.
So there are levels.
Stuart,
there are
have
levels.
You got your hand up to speak?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I just the level of detail, the level of detail that we're going into here, I think is almost beyond a building safety manager, because going up to the Newton pressures on what a door closer is required is going to be, for a building safety manager who is looking after a whole building, to have that level of depth of knowledge and information about the doors just seems to be going a bit too heavy for me. I work in social housing, so we have to replace flat entrance front doors and communal area fire doors on a reasonably cyclical basis. What we do in terms of our procurement is we work out the fire strategy for that building and what the protection level is required for those escape routes to be maintained. We then take that specification of information to experts who are able to provide a door with the adequate certification on the back of it, a bi-sided test to make sure that with all the correct ironmongery that was tested on it to fit the aperture, and will give us that level of protection, rather than us having to say, well, I need a door that's BS 47622, that's the bi-sided one, but I need ironmongery and I quote the BS mark and everything like that. For a building safety manager, and we're expected them to be at that level, that's more fire engineer level for my understanding, than a building safety manager.
Yeah, Stuart, we're not suggesting that this is only for building safety managers. It's what's critical, I think, in this process is to ensure that the information that you as the building safety manager need is recorded in this, but and make sure that it's recorded in a form of words that you can relate to. And also we'll go, not now, but we go down to the next level of detail where we say, how does that from a software point of view need to be described so it becomes machine readable, so that you don't need to read a specification to understand it. But when that process is going through, it then can be automatically validated. But the purpose, the reason we've got such a wide group of people on the call is we've got representatives from various different aspects, including, for example, Gaz from as a designer might need to know that. So somebody else that's, as I say, doing maintenance might need.
Right. I think the consensus of opinion is that the question is very broad and every stakeholder needs different things. Well, I think we can agree on that. That being the case, from your own specific point of view, is there anything that should be on those answers that isn't there? Don't worry about anybody else, just worry about your point of view. Is there anything there that is missing? And hopefully we've got enough of a cross-section of the industry that we can run the gamut. And then once we get through to examining this afterwards, if we need to divide it up into 3 or 4 or 8 different sections, we can do that. But for the purpose of this exercise, just look at what you or people adjacent to you might require and what you think needs to be added in there.
I think if we thought long enough, we could probably double the size of the list that's there. And I'm not suggesting we do that for one moment, but what might be a different way of coming at this same question is what information is required, as Stuart just said, as a building manager. If Stuart is replacing doors, he probably needs about 6 bits of information for him to go out and procure that. For somebody to install it, similar amount of information. For somebody to inspect it, what information do they require? Because I think understanding the process that we go through at the various stages, what comes out of that is the information required. What we've kind of gone into here is...
But what information do you require, Steve?
We require basically, well, off the top of my head, first thing is the fire safety strategy, and understand the compartmentation strategy of the wall. Is it 30 minutes? Is it 60 minutes? Is it 90 minutes? We need to understand whether it's a smoke or not smoke. We need to understand the width and obviously the dimensions of the door and the wall thicknesses. We need to know the weight of the door and ensure that the wall can take that weight. Ironmongery itself is interesting and challenging because we would only procure a fire door set, as everyone would nowadays. That usually comes with ironmongery, and it will also come with a field of application, extended application, which is called an XAP. We need to ensure that any ironmongery on that door is comparable and compatible with the fire door certification. That's quite a complicated exercise, specifically if there are security implications or door entry systems being fitted, because if the ironmongery is outside of the XAP, you could compromise. You easily compromise the certification.
Are those points included on this list?
They're probably not all of them, because I've not looked at it, probably not understood the question. And if I were to list out what I need to install it, and then what evidence we would provide to confirm that it's a compliant door set, which is our regulation 38 information. So I could probably do that differently if that was required.
Okay, well, why don't you, to save Jess's typing, put that into the comments, so Jess can just copy and paste what you need, and we can put those on the questions.
Okay.
Because it's what you need, and that's what this is about. It's what each of you needs.
It's what we would need to procure it.
It doesn't matter if there's 100 answers on there. They'll be divided up. There's no problem with that.
The one thing that I would like to see, and if you speak to door manufacturers, it's probably easy to break into the Tower of London to nick the crown jewels, is their proper documentation, because they are loath to give it out. They're hiding behind it's our intellectual property and stuff like that. But at the end of the day,
really? Right, okay.
If you're looking at the golden,
well, Daniel, I'll say what I said to Steve. Type it into the comments box as an answer, and we'll put it on there. Can just copy and paste it. He's not a quick enough typist to do all this.
I'm trying to find the comments box.
Oh no! Do you know what? I can never find it either. That's why I didn't direct you. Where's the comments box? You know, at the top, there's a little bubble, like a voice bubble.
Yes. Show conversation.
Yeah, it's in there. Seriously, man, if you type that in there, as you've told me there, then we could put that on there as a question. Because that's the point. It is right across the industry as far as it's possible to do that with 12 people. But that's, you know, what we're trying to do. And yes, it's a little bit ambitious and it could have been more focused. Well,
Richard, can I just give an example of what Danny's just been talking about there?
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is one that I've looked at recently, which is from Assa Abloy, who are obviously a major manufacturer. And this is their specification. This is their declaration of performance. And you can see here that they've got information about harmonized standards. You've got the declared performance, which goes through the closing, showing that it's passed all of the relevant standards. By the way, if you want this standard, you've got to go and buy it and then understand it. What it's then doing, it's saying at different positions how that particular item performs, and then you've got a reference down here what the class is, and also what you've got here are the door closer sizes and what their torque is and all that sort of stuff. Now, my challenge with this, I've looked at this because I'm not a construction professional. I've just looked at this. If I were let's say somebody working in an FM department and I'm replacing a door, this is the performance capability of that type of door to say that depending on the context, it will or won't satisfy that context, right? Now, I think that what the person that's actually doing the procurement of the door needs to know isn't that depending on what the door width is or what the door thickness is, because somebody will have made that decision by the time it gets installed. I think we need to know what the value is of that particular individual door and how it's been set, because otherwise when you come along to replace it, I believe you won't have the information that you need. So that's why we're really saying that we want to be able to capture the information that I think we've all listened to the Grenfell inquiry, and you know the context in which the person is.
George, I don't know about anybody else. I can't hear you.
Oh, great. Okay.
Right, now I can.
Okay, I don't know why. Sorry. Did you hear the rest of my stuff?
I got a Grenfell inquiry.
Yeah, I think it might be another mute required from everyone. I think that's what's happening. It may.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, good point. If everybody mutes.
Yeah, all I was saying was that in the Grenfell inquiry, it's clear that the whole thing is coming around to it being the competent person, and there's a lot of people in that supply chain that need explicit information rather than having to interpret based on being knowledgeable in certain areas. We're going to come on to competency, Daniel, and training shortly. But in terms of the asset information, the thing that I'm looking for, and I guess I'm the procurer of this at the end of the day, I want to know what information actually everybody needs. So if I just give you another example, everybody thinks that BIM solves all this because it'll all be in the BIM model. Yeah, but in practice, what we've got here is, for example, fire rating is described in different ways. But these are 4 BIM models, and in some they're described FD-30S. In others it's FD30. In others it's FD_30, and that means that it's not computer readable. And then you've also got different ways of describing the attributes. which from a software engineering point of view is a nightmare. And here you've got it's a half hour. And this is something that we're working on with the BIM4 housing associations, the housing association data group, to try and resolve all of this. But I don't know if you've seen, this is the BIM data, it's called IFC, for a door. And you can look at this and you'll see all of these different attributes. And if you look at most BIM models, these are all in the BIM models themselves, and they're all empty because they're actually needed by different people at different times. And things like, you know, the new BS 8644, they've introduced another 10 attributes that they're presumably expecting people to be recording. So I presume it's important information that are over and above these requirements. Now, that's not a problem, because if we've got all of this information, we can then slice it out according to who needs it. So, for example, what I've done here is identified the information that that is probably needed by by a designer, or by somebody that's bothered about compliance, or somebody that is looking at the environmental side of things. All of this.
So basically, this is our sort of answers to our question, and that's why there are so many answers.
Yeah, that's right.
Excellent. So let's get back to our question.
Is that the end point for what we're trying to achieve? Is that extend that list?
Yes. Well, that's just on this question. What information do we need to know about a fire door?
So should we look at that list and add extra items that we think are missing to that list?
What I'm going to do, and that's a very good question, right? Let me tell you where I'm coming from with this. So I've started to do that already.
Because as you picked up there, that had fire rating on it, and the slide before had an I, which is insulation, which is typically needed for glazing areas. So I've just noticed on that Kobe list, it talked about fire rating.
Well,
confused within there is an insulation rating.
Yeah, interestingly, in MBS, there is no term for fire rating. It's in the MBS specification. It says fire integrity and fire insulation.
Integrity and insulation is fine, because insulation is about the radiant heat through a door, and the integrity is how long the door will hold the fire back.
Understood. So they are important attributes. That's my point.
Yeah.
Can I make a point?
It didn't have those two. It only had one.
I understand that. That's because that isn't in IFC. So let me just show you this. What I've got here, and this is the conundrum that we're trying to address within the Housing Association data group. Here we've got Kobe data. Yeah. Now these are Kobe attributes, which are basically generic to any type of product, whether it's a door, a window, a pump, or whatever. It's just standard stuff. Who's the manufacturer? What's the warranty, etc. We've then got the one I've just shown you there, which is the IFC and the environmental data standards. So this is going to be also important information. But then you've got MBS. Now, MBS, a lot of people are using MBS for the specification, and they've got different ways of describing things. Yeah, so they've got different parameters. We've also got ETIM. Now, ETIM is the Wholesalers Institute. So this is what all the wholesalers and manufacturers will be providing. And then you've got the declarations of performance, the ones I was just showing you earlier. So all of those are relevant. Plus, we've obviously got the new ones that are coming through as BS 8644. Now, the way in which we're approaching this, our end goal with this is to actually put it into a master library, which then people, software engineers and people that are accessing information can get the data that they need. Now, you don't need to worry about the fact that there's two or 300 attributes against a particular object, because you will only see the 6 that you need for your particular purpose. And that's why we've got a, you know, we're trying to get a collection of people on this. Does that make sense?
So you've shown about 4 or 5 different standards at the moment, all collecting information on a door. And are we, you know, a lot of that, some of those are going to repeat, and some of them will be new, unique. Some of them will be unique. And what we're saying is that we're going to produce another list, which is or a compendium of all the existing lists plus any extra bits that we need.
Yeah, what I'm asking at the moment, and you know, to be frank, people have been trying to do this, Steve, unsuccessfully for 5 years. What I'm trying to do at the moment from this group is talk to people who are subject matter experts from different perspectives and understand the 5 bits of information or the 10 bits of information that are really important to them.
Because all of that, pretty much most of that information that you've shown was all about the product, not about the installation.
No, I've got more on that. Yeah.
Is it worth breaking it down slightly further? So you have a section for front entrance doors, which you can click onto, a section for riser doors, which you can click into, and a section, say, for communal doors. Because otherwise you've got too much, you could have information overload there when, you know, the requirements for a front entrance door are different to a riser cupboard, and try and simplify it in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really very worthwhile point, Dan. But the important thing, as far as how that's organized from a data perspective, if you leave that with us, because we've got people that specialize in that sort of stuff, right? What we want to do, so giving the example that you've said there, what we've got is a door. Yeah. Now, the base set of information that you need about every door, even if it's, whatever the door is, you've then got use cases, or you've got things that door is expected to do. So if it's acting as a front door, then it will have additional information. If it's acting as an external door, then it will have additional information. And what we're doing, we're basically, we've got different ways of viewing the information that can accommodate that particular use case, as it were. There's also something in the data engineering thing called actors. So you've got different people that want to see different information in different contexts, if that makes sense. And that's why the risk side of things is important, because what the HSE are trying to do is look at things from a point of view of the asset data. What risk are we actually trying to mitigate? And therefore, what information, how does that door need to perform simply to address that particular risk? Now, there's other information that we're going to be capturing, but that's one risk. Does that make sense? So I think it was my intention that once we've finished this session here, we will distill the information that we've got, but we'll also invite you to go through the Housing Association data information as experts to look at fire doors, yeah. And we've got one next week. We've got 2 next week, one on cavity barriers and one on AOVs. So we're actually going to go through, we've identified there's about 20 or so asset types across.
George, you've got 2 sentences with no commas. And then we go back to the question.
It's all right, carry on.
Right, question 2. Just put question 2 back up.
Question 2 was the assets, wasn't it?
We're still on it.
We got 3
What's
new
question
entries.
2? Here we are. What information?
Yep.
Have we done this one?
Yes.
No, we haven't. We have done it.
Yeah, we've done it. That's what we've been talking about.
So
yeah, we've been talking about it. We haven't done it.
These
Has
are the 3
everybody
new
typed in everything? Has everybody put in the comments field anything that's missing for them on that list? Is there anyone that hasn't put anything that's missing for them on the list?
So has everybody done it?
Everybody's done that. Gary?
I'm just typing up one more thing.
All right, mate. No, I see. I saw you've been doing it. Thank you. And from your own point of view, is there anything on that list that you feel is missing for you, for information that you need? Just bash it into the box, and just we'll add it in. Unless anybody tells me otherwise, I'll assume that's been done. Okay, just put up. Do you want to put up question 3? There we go. George, do you have an intro to this?
Yes. Yeah, so what we're trying to do here, Steve Cook, Wilmot Dixon have given me access to their yellow book, which in my view is excellent because it's actually got explicit steps to actually go through that they expect their installers and people that are doing inspections to actually follow. And there's a number of people. I imagine that most of the major contractors have gone through the same thing, and I'm sure Danny has as well. What I wanted, where I'm trying to get to with this, I don't know how familiar people are with SFG 20, but that is a maintenance standard. So if I just share this for the moment, this is something that we manage within. This is maintenance for a door, and they're very generic specification or competency. But you've got a list of the relevant legislation, and this is issued to somebody that's carrying out maintenance. Now they're expected to be competent, but this has come largely from healthcare, where they have to evidence the individual tasks that are being carried out. Now, what I think would be very useful, and this is something that I know that there's a UCAS standard being created for competency of maintenance generally. I think it would be extremely useful if we can do this same sort of thing for all of the different elements, for installation, inspection, so that there's a common way that you can then evidence that. So that's one of the things. We're not going to do that today, but if you can share with us information about that type of thing. Steve, sorry, Danny, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, it's when you're looking at maintenance, I think there are 2 angles that you need to look at it, and you need to be quite specific about it. Because some people see upgrading a fire door as maintaining it. Now, under the certification schemes, you can only maintain a fire door as you found it. And a lot of it is down to what information have you got about that particular door set? And if you're looking at social housing in particular, if they've inherited blocks which are 40, 50 years old, then they probably won't have anything. And I think there's also an issue that's come about with the word notional fire doors, and that is causing havoc within the industry. And I think you need to have a better understanding of how the UCAS maintenance schemes are run in order for you to draw up a sort of like a decent proposal and a decent checklist.
Yeah, we won't be doing the checklist. It's going to be coming from people, like you.
Right. It's just to make sure that people don't get confused with a maintaining of a fire door and trying to upgrade it, because they're two completely different things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's a third one. There's the third one, isn't there, about repairs to existing fire doors? And there's a whole load of documentation about what you can and cannot do. I can't remember the name of it, but I think it's by Trada, isn't it?
Yeah, they've got their approved repair techniques. There's like 23 odd items on there.
Yeah.
And the idea is you go and inspect a door, and every fault, you look down your article, your approved repair technique, it gives you a number and tells you how to repair it.
So,
yeah.
well,
what a lot of people
I think a lot of the risk will be taken away from that, and I don't think we'll be allowed to.
No.
My guess is that, and this is me guessing, this isn't a corporate position, the risk will be too great of anyone who is not competent touching that door and doing something that makes it not contributing to life safety, and we'll be told you've got to replace it if you've got to do anything to it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. Some of the way that repair and maintenance contracts in the past has been about fix and make good and repair. And I think you're absolutely right. I agree with that. That's likely to disappear.
Well, let's go back to the question, and let's get some answers or some additional answers from what we've already got. So, Jess, do you want to scan down? How many we've got there? Scan down, Jess. Okay, is that all on one screen? It is all on one screen. So, if you can all look at these answers to this question. I know many of you have written these answers, so presumably you're happy with them. Just have a look, and just from your own specific personal, professional point of view, is there anything there that's missing?
Yes. On the first sentence.
That's standard, isn't it? I knew
it is, yes. Yeah. On the first sentence, you talk about BM4.
Yeah.
Realistically, what you should say is take out BM4 and put UCAS accredited scheme.
Yeah.
Are we agreeing on that? Any naysayers on that?
Well, there's others out there other than BM4. You could put, for example, BM4, IFC, Exovia, whatever. But I think you're right. UCAS accredited organisation.
UCAS is more relevant. Okay.
They audit the certification bodies.
Just get that.
It's a K, UCAS with a K.
UKAS.
Yes.
Have you got that, Justa?
Yes.
You have got it.
Yeah.
Where's the K?
So if I can explain what I'm looking for, because I need to. This is what I'm. Or Gary, did you want to say something?
Yeah, thanks, George. Just quickly, I guess just a bit of a challenge, really. Do we need to be setting out what the tasks and method statements actually are, or do we just need to be saying that we need certification to prove that it has been installed correctly, has been, if we are allowed to maintain still, it has been maintained correctly? Do we need to actually be setting out what those method statements are? We don't have the skill to do that.
Yes, we do need to do that. Now, if you don't have the skills to do it, I respect that, but we do need to set them out because we need to identify what those are, so that we can start to feed towards the type of thing that has come out. SFG20 has been put together by the M&E maintenance community, and I believe we need an equivalent set of standardized procedures. As I've put in that note there, the direct works, which represents, as I understand it, 80% housing associations, they were involved in an initiative last year, I think it was last year or the year before, where they assessed 550 fire people that said that they were able to install fire doors. And of them, when they went through that assessment, they found that only 6 actually were, they passed the assessment. Now, I'm trying to find out more information about that, but I think we do need to have something that is explicit, because that's the way the industry is going. I think you need to, yeah. Anyway,
so just to respond, I guess I'm just not sure it's realistic or the role of this group to define how to properly install a fire door.
And if we don't know, yeah, I respect that, because we've got another one or probably 2 sessions coming up where we hope to have people that install fire doors.
I think one of the problems that we've got is we hear phrases like third-party certification. So we go through to a third-party certification scheme, but they're all different. And for example, that if you do BM4, you can put one person on the course and he can sign off the works of 20 other people.
Yeah, as the supervisor, yeah.
Everybody who's installing the door has to be trained. And so there's a great disparity under this terminology, third-party certification. And I think it needs to be reined.
I think we'll come on to that when we get down to competency. I think that's
yeah.
I totally agree with you, but I think let's just try and keep the question answers tight for this, because hopefully it's covered later on.
But the question is very broad again, because you've got one is about the product and the other one is about installation. And the other one is about inspection.
Statements, all of which are different. I agree.
Yeah. So Steve, you've got procedures, haven't you? You've got task lists that you use.
Yeah, we've got from an installation perspective, anyone installing a fire door has to work for an organisation that's accredited by a UCAS accredited organisation at a company level. So that might be IFC, TRADA, could be a number of organisations, and sometimes that third-party assessment of the company may specifically name the supervisor, but sometimes it doesn't, and that's at the company level, and that makes sure that the company has the systems and processes, checklists and training in-house. A supervisor has either got to be named in that certification or hold an MVQ level 2, not just in carpentry, but there's a specific module within the NVQ for installation of fire doors, and the supervisor needs to have had that. And then the worker is the installer. Currently, they don't have to have anything, but they have to be under the supervision of a competent supervisor that's ultimately signing off their work. But as a minimum, they have to have had a toolbox talk by the fire door set manufacturer and understood the installation instructions. So that's a sort of 3 levels of competence: installing organisation, supervisor, and operative. And that's what we require. And then we have a checklist, which is just an installation checklist for our own QD records.
So would it make sense to have that checklist in a standardized form, just like they have in the whole of the M&E industry, that then it would mean that you've got an effective way of knowing whether something has been done in accordance with best practice?
One of the growing issues is that the organisations themselves, as a UCAS accredited organisation, they have to have their own processes in place, and the accreditation bodies out there a credit there as part of their management system. So whilst I agree with what you're saying, it's a bit like saying, why don't we have a standard management system that everyone works to? It's you could certainly have an indicative one, but it's very different, and different door set manufacturers have different installation instructions to suit their doors. You know, a GRP door is a very different fire door to a steel or a timber, and a double door set's very different from a single. There's quite a lot of variation, so a lot of it revolves around manufacturers' installation instructions as well. So I don't think that's going to be possible, but it's a good point.
Sorry, can I just, we've got a couple of hands up, but I'd like to just throw it open to a couple of other people. Kelly, we've not heard from you. What are your thoughts on this?
Sorry, I'm on mute because it's very, very loud where I am at the minute. I'm coming from this from a different point of view with regards to we're looking at how we're going to be inspecting doors. I know somebody made a comment there about having 30,000 fire doors. We're probably on the similar lines to that as well. And our concern is all around how, you know, the competency to do that. Who are we going to get to do that? How often we're going to get to do that? Yeah, and how we record that data, because I think the biggest challenge for us, which we've been looking at, is the actual recording specifically to each door. And something else that's not on your list, what we've been looking at is is there a way to record data in real time on these doors, actually have sensors and links that send off information that tells you if doors haven't closed properly and things like that. So we're kind of looking at technology as well, which would be interesting.
Almost intelligent doors.
Yeah, looking at ways that just, you know, we've got obviously different types of doors and what we actually do with those doors. Are we going to have a program to replace all of those doors? How we're going to approach it? And actually, if we do that, then we need to be looking at that, you know, technology, how we're going to maintain them in the future, because for an organisation that's got so many fire doors, it's going to be really difficult to do that. And now, and the other thing that I think needs to be incorporated in here, I know it's holding the data and information, but it's also how are we going to inspect doors on customers' flats? So I know that's not holding the data of the installation, but it's all around how are doors manufactured for us to have that data in BIM, in the golden thread, so we know what we need to look at and how we're going to process that if we're not going to have the access. What is the minimum of information we can have if we really can't get in and view these?
Right, Kelly, let me throw that back at you. What is the minimum information you can have? What is the minimum information you need to function properly?
So I suppose with a customer's door, which is obviously a lot harder to inspect, my first initial thing is we need to ensure that door closes properly. So this is where we're looking at like intelligent data. Is there a way to actually be able to put some data into these doors to find out if these doors don't close properly? I know they're all going to close their doors behind them if they're in their house, you close your door naturally. But actually, if it was in an emergency, do we know if these doors are going to close?
Right, can I ask you then to go in the comments, put number 3 and type in there what you think is missing from this list from your point of view.
Okay.
Richard, could I know Gary.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sorry, I know that people have got their hands up. I'd like to ask Ian Smith. Ian, are you there at the moment?
I am, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the reason I'm asking Ian is Ian's run. He was the technical director at Pinnacle, so he's run hundreds of maintenance engineers that have been doing maintenance. So,
right, yeah.
What in terms of having, does it make sense, Ian, to have some sort of standardized task lists? Ian and I haven't discussed this, so I might be wrong.
Yeah, Yeah, I've been fortunate in working with companies, including Pinnacle, who've been quite well ahead in terms of recognising the importance of fire doors. So on PFI schools, you've got hundreds of doors in a senior school. Same in housing. It's interesting the comments that have been made in relation to the sort of door to apartments and the like. And yeah, these are always a problem. It's surprising how many people don't seem to take their own safety and recognise that they should have somebody check that door to make sure it's correct. But yeah, going forward, I think, whilst I don't want to push us back into the bad old days, coming out of Hackett, it was quite evident that whole tranches of the industry had removed fire doors without any thought of the consequence of that. Far less having doors that fit. So I think going forward, once things settle down, there'll be a much better and better organised benchmark in terms of managing the fire door inspections and the maintenance and other repairs that would arise out of that. I do think it's important that people who work on fire doors have the appropriate knowledge, training and experience, and that again comes out of Hackett. We've taken delivery on some new build sites recently, and it's quite evident that whoever put in the fire doors really didn't understand what they were doing, and unfortunately the IC in the checking didn't know what he was looking at either. So we end up with a building that's signed off by building control but has numerous fire door faults all over it. That
so
we then.
Is there anything you would add into this list for questions?
No, I think the list is generally it covers everything that's needed.
Excellent.
And I think as we go forward, it will draw into a nice action plan.
Excellent. Stuart, are you still there?
Yes. Yep. Still here.
Find your mute button. Hi there, mate. Just asking you, anything here from your point of view? You're a BIM manager, I think you said.
No, I'm a building safety manager. I'm not a BIM manager.
I beg your pardon. Building safety manager. Anything on this list that you think needs to be added to, or there's something you should be putting in there?
No, I think it's fairly well-rounded for my
covers everything you want.
Requirements. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so can we assume that if anybody's got anything to add, they put it into the comments? If I'm wrong, tell me now.
Yeah, I've got a question, and that is, if we were to try and draw together some sort of initiative to produce best practice examples for installation and inspection, are there places that we should, or people that we should be talking to who might be willing to share their knowledge?
The British Woodworking Federation have got loads of really good resources.
Great, thank you.
I'd go there.
Joanna, could you put a time code on that? Make a note of the time for that comment because it's important. Thank you.
Will do.
Danny, your hand's still up. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say that I've done sort of thousands and thousands of post-installation inspections, and I could share you photos of the horrors that I find, if required.
Yeah, that would definitely be helpful, because one of the things we want to do, another thing, I seem as though I'm singing the praises of Wilmot Dixon all the time, but what I've been also impressed with the Yellow Book is that they've got this means of, they've got this culture of people reporting back things that go wrong. So it's this black box thinking to be able to identify problems, and then so that they can be engineered out. And something, Danny, that we were very keen to start looking at in BIM for housing, because if we can start to gather that together as an industry experience, then that becomes a very useful resource.
I think it's also for the benefit of, because I do a lot of post-installation inspections for contractors, and what you find is when the installer gets it wrong, be they third party or not, they soon learn very quickly how to put things right and what to look at. And then all of a sudden the main contractor will turn around and say, oh, Danny's coming on site, and they panic. But they make sure that everything is correct, that they've got a copy of the installation instructions, the copy of the correct materials they're using. And it's just trying to educate people that this is what you need to be doing. And it's not being done to sort of say, look at you, you're completely useless. It's being done for life safety. And eventually when they get the message through to that, then they're a lot more receptive. And I've always thought that what there should be is, okay, you've got your installation, your supervisors and that, but there should be an independent tier going in and signing things off. Because again, when you're looking at certification schemes, it's very, very easy to pass because you're audited twice a year. You normally book 6 weeks in advance and you tell them what site to go on. And it's just checking your work on the day. But if there was such a way that there was an organisation that could drop in and just do random inspections, I think that would help the industry greatly. And the comment about new build, I concur with 100%. That, you know, the installations in new build are absolutely shocking. And I was speaking to one of the directors who used to be at Berkeley Homes. He said the average base build defect for high rise in London is between 1.5 and 2.5 million.
Wow.
Which I just thought was shocking.
Okay, so just to get back to the questions, are we all saying that number 3 is complete?
Yeah.
Anybody who doesn't say no will assume it's a yes. Right, Jester, do you want to move down to number 4? There we go. Competency. This is what we've already been talking about, so this will be easy, and it's all on one page. So that's what we've got right now. George, do you want to do your intro?
I think probably I've covered a fair bit of it. I think the important thing here, obviously, is to look at both the training, and also I think we do need standard procedures.
This is what Dan was just saying, wasn't it? And you yourself.
Yeah, I think if we have some standardized procedures, you've then got something you can audit against. There are things that are coming through. The Fire Industry Association have told me that they've got a range of different elements. I've dropped down there the people that you know I've been told about, but it would be good to there's a I think I explained that there's a new standard that is actually being evolved at the moment, a UCAS standard for competency. It's so if you could feed to us any other initiatives that we can feed through that would be excellent. I think we've got quite a few of those.
You know, I'll tell you something that I've gleaned over the last half hour is that there are lots of nationally recognised approved routes of competence. Unfortunately, some are better than others. So that's. Hello, sorry, what's still on? I've got a call coming through and it cuts me off.
Yeah.
Some are better than others. So we need something that is nationally recognised as the one, don't we? Or is that impossible?
Wouldn't that come under the NVQ level 2?
Don't know.
Don't know, would it?
I believe that there's other working groups that are going on, a competency working group. I believe Build UK are leading that one on behalf of the Construction Leadership Council. as part of the Dame Judith Hackett. I mean, the competency thing is a bit shocking at the moment, and it certainly needs to be resolved. But I think there's a working group going on, but I'm not aware of anyone. I don't know anyone directly involved with that.
I do. I know Andy Frankham was on Working Group 8, and I know he's just moved and gone on to the Competency Working Group. So I'll try and get an update directly from him and get it to
really good. Really good.
Excellent.
I know it came up in another work stream. It wasn't about fire doors. It was about cavity barriers actually. But you can get certified to fit a cavity barrier, and you go onto site and you show your documentation, and you are certified to fit a cavity barrier. Unfortunately, you've been certified to fit a cavity barrier in a certain situation. And the cavity barriers that need fitting are in a totally different situation. So the person who's certified to fit that cavity barrier doesn't actually know what they're doing, but they're certified. So how does that work?
That's one of. I mean, I was talking with Amira, who are a fire door manufacturer, earlier in the week, and they basically said that the problem with the certification is that they can actually go and do an assessment, and they can do it very quickly, and actually there's no real rigor behind how that's being managed apparently. So I think that's obviously a concern. I mean, I imagine that. I mean, clearly we want a culture where we've got people that are properly trained and are properly accredited. But is that enough? If you are a building safety manager or an accountable person or a responsible person, is it adequate for you just to say we appointed somebody that had the right accreditations? I guess it might be. I don't know. But if people die,
it has to be, because otherwise that job becomes untenable very quickly, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think we have to go. The UCAS standard is X. The providers are BM Trada, QMark, or whoever that sits underneath it, and I kind of got to get to a point where we go. We have to rely on the controls and the business are in place. The funding and how they get there, dark art. Don't understand it sometimes, but actually we need to get to the point where we've got that. But we're rapidly moving to a place where a building safety manager is going to have a license to operate and be to doing that. So, you know, it doesn't take a massive leap of faith to get to a point where we're going to end up with carpenters in the same way as you've got gas safe engineers. And I should think you have a ticket where you can go, I can do fire doors, but I can't touch anything else. Or I can do some type of carpentry, but I can't do anything else. In the same way, you could have commercial boilers. You can touch commercial boilers, but you can't touch domestic. Or you touch unvented, but you can't touch vented. You know, all those different permutations that sit underneath the gas safe ticket. You're going to have to that. Fundamentally, if you're employing someone, you've got to have, you've got an obligation to get them home safely every day. So you've got to train them and put them in the right position. And if you're responsible for someone in a building, we've got to do the same. We've got to keep them safe in their home. So I kind of, if I try and control the accreditation, my mind will explode. It's exploding at the moment already with net zero carbon, supply chain issues, the aging workforce. So actually, that's out of my control. What I can control is what I want. I want competent people. Competency is kind of over there. I won't employ you unless you've got a competency, and it's as simple as that. And that's where we need to get to with some of this stuff. It is, yes, you're going to need competency if you're going to look at anything with fire, basically. And if you're going to do it, supervisors, inspectors. The door inspections is probably one that worries me. How we get the consistent view of consistent door inspections, and that doesn't overrule UCAS accredited installation. Sorry, it's a bit of a soapbox moment there, and apologies, but it just
no.
That's the competency standard is set. Yeah. Fine. Tell me when it is, and tell me how I've got to get those people trained.
Absolutely right, Luke. I agree that there's a bar. It's about setting that bar and trusting that UCAS accredited. From a manufacturer's perspective, no one ever checks the competencies of the bench joiners in the door set manufacturing facility. What you're looking for is that is a fire door that is tested by a UCAS accredited test house, and they have certification for that fire door. That's all what we need, and it's the same with competency. We need the installers we need to set the bar, and that's the bar you need to jump over.
Completely, and we need to find the right balance between setting that bar and going, actually, the lens that we're looking at through this is all, we know the BR, you know, we can all cast aspersions on the BRE testing, we can all cast the stuff that's gone on and the scale that's gone on, but actually we need to say, they're sitting their money on the line, that's their standard they're saying, and if everyone reaches that standard, it becomes really good for us. Because, you know, I've done it where I had 30 chippies on board and we had a small team doing fire doors, got them BM trialed and it was brilliant. The supervisor who could actually sign off third-party works was accredited, and honestly, these were dyed-in-the-wool chippies, and some of them turned around and said some of the best training they'd done, the trial stuff, and it was really good. But it also allowed us to support fire risk actions in a different way, support training, you know, different career paths for trades as well, other incentives about how you can pay differently. It unlocks an awful lot. So, but you've got to trust that standard is the right one.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Luke. I wasn't suggesting that you drill down into the detail, just as I'm not suggesting that a client that's employing a maintenance, an FM, an M&E maintenance person would go down into that level of detail. What they do in their processes, they need to record what tasks have actually been carried out, because if there is an issue, they need to be able to evidence that the person was instructed correctly to do the work. That's current and absolutely required in the M&E market. And
so yeah, that's where it comes down to. It's a gas safe ticket, or it's a CSCS card, or the new equivalent of that goes, I've got a license to operate in this sector, looking at those things. There's my competency. It's updated annually. I get checked every X, Y, and Z. And it's down to the employer to evidence that, how they've selected that person, unfortunately, and then how they've instructed that person to carry out their duties.
That's absolutely right. But what I'm saying is that in the maintenance, if the M&E maintenance market, if, for example, you're maintaining an air conditioning unit, it's not adequate to anymore. It used to be the case that you'd have a competent person, they carried out a 6-monthly maintenance, and you just instruct them to do the normal 6-monthly maintenance. Now it's coming through that there's 12 tasks that they have to carry out, and there's a checklist and that I think is coming down the line. It's not for you, Luke, to define what those tasks are. That's where experts like Danny or others that have got experience of what those various different things are would carry that out. That's Gary.
Sorry, can I just bring Lee in now? Lee's not said much for a while.
Sorry,
Lee.
Hi. I'll talk when I've got something to add. There's a lot better experts in here than me. So yeah, just carry on.
Okay, mate. Okay, Danny.
I think the greatest thing.
Daniel, sorry.
That's all right. I think the greatest thing that we could achieve is to get regulation within the fire door industry, because at the moment there is absolutely zero.
That's interesting, isn't it?
I agree with you, but that's outside of the scope of what we're trying to achieve. Our task is really to try and define what information is needed under which circumstances to support the safe, the golden thread, really. And I think in terms of the accreditation, I absolutely agree with you. Daz.
Hi there. I guess I think the response I gave was more from obviously a designer's point of view. I think obviously a lot of this is to do with either installation or maintenance. What I've kind of come across from more recently on a couple of the projects is that depending on the material of the door, and I've said before, mentioned about the different requirements of security, fire, access control, aesthetics. It seems like not all of them can be achieved with every different type of door material, for example. So, and that might be just due to the subcontractor that the contractor has chosen or is going with. But certain fire doors, certain timber doors can't have a pass rating if they've got as access control, or the other way around with a steel door or an aluminium. So I think from a competency point of view, what I'm realizing is that I guess so as designers, we probably need to have kind of continue that sort of CPD kind of element of it from different suppliers to understand what the barriers to achieving ever so more increasingly complex things that the doors have to do. As I say, from fire to access control to security and then obviously the aesthetic element as well. So yeah, before we get to installing or maintaining, it seems like there's quite a lot of things that either can or can't be achieved just because the doors haven't been tested for those scenarios from suppliers that we're coming across on recent projects. And that, like I said, that may just be a consequence of the supplier as opposed to the industry. But that was quite interesting. We were designed, and then you only came across this problem when they actually come to procure and install the project. Then you had to go around the whole exercise, changing everything again.
Okay, so in terms of the question, obviously there's a lot of points of view out there, but in terms of the actual question that we're asking, are we covering thus far what you want? It's as simple and as complicated as that, really. Do the answers in this question cover what you individually need?
I think just drawing on what I was saying, like I said, I don't know if there's some sort of simple matrix which says with this type of door you can't achieve this security rating or something. Yeah. And I don't know, like I said, if it's a national thing or a product-based thing or a supplier-specific manufacturer point of view, but that would help me from a competency point of view, so that I don't.
Okay, well, let me ask you. Okay, Jazz, well, let me ask you to put that in as an answer to number 4, for just to type in. What do you want?
Yeah, I think
you
I
just
did
told me
to the thing, but I'll type it again.
If you've already done it on the document you sent, then it should be in there. And if it isn't, I apologise, because it should be.
That's cool. No worries.
Steve.
The issue that Andrew's raised, I've bombed a load of stuff in the chat from our fire policy just to give you visibility of our approach.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
The point that Andrew's making in relation to ironmongery fitted to doors often happens after it comes out after procurement. So you set yourselves on a door set manufacturer, they've got all the accreditations they need and the fire door tests, but then you find out when you get really into the detail that their door certification is invalid because the ironmongery you propose to fit is not compatible with it. And that is something that really does need to be picked up in the specification. You know, we've had instances where a customer, you know, working in some hospitals, they've got their own access control system, and that's it. That's their access control company. Sometimes we hand the door over, and then their access control company comes in and destroys the door to fit. So that's an issue, and part of that goes back to earlier on about how difficult it is to get primary test evidence and copies of the extended field of application, because all the door set manufacturers they won't say, oh, here's a door and it achieves 75 minutes. They'll say, oh, it only needs to meet 50. So they'll look at trying to, well, what can we save to compete in the market, because we only need to achieve 60 minutes. And if it achieves 75, it's over-engineered. So they all want to get hold of each other's test data to find out how they've done it. I don't know where that is going to be resolved. This question here is I've seen this question here about competency of the operatives, of the installers, rather than the competency of the product, because as far as we're concerned, the product is certified.
Yeah, I think this is about. I think you're right. It's about personnel.
And until, as was mentioned earlier by Luke, until somebody legislates, like they have done with Gas Safe, that says you can't work on a fire door unless you've got this qualification, we're pushing the market. You know, we're trying to lead, and we're putting competency requirements out there. And all we get back from, well, what we're getting back from a lot of our supply chain is, well, no one else is asking for this, and I've got to spend £3 a year.
Well, yeah, but you must remember, Steve, the point of this operation is that this feeds through to the MHCLG.
Yeah.
The point of this, our procedures, by the way, have been approved by them.
Yeah.
This is semi-official, I guess. What we're doing is to feed directly or semi-directly through to that. What we're doing here is to help, hopefully, frame legislation, guidelines, official guidelines, whatever you want to call it, moving forward. So it's not about the status quo, it's about what we want in the future.
Well, the quicker we can level the field on competence and agree where that bar needs to be set and get that in place, the more comfortable we'll all be. And
I think you're absolutely right, which is why we're doing it, man. So
right.
If you've got anything, if you personally, Steve, you've got something that, well, professionally, that needs to be added into this list, you know what to do.
Yeah, we've got the current requirements and that's reflected there, so that's great.
Fantastic, fantastic. Right, let's have a Paul.
Yeah, just a quick point. I think Steve makes a really relevant point there about the ironmongery. Well, I had an example last year where Warrington Fire stood down a product which was in common usage, a closer type on a door, and they wouldn't give any leeway about this. So as far as they were concerned, every product that had that closer, which they'd now removed from their approved list, was no longer the registration or the certification was no longer integrity. So I think there's a real problem in that sense of not only every action that goes on that door, but there's a need to keep an understanding of what products are approved. And when they do go to remove these products, if they're going to remove a product from an approved list, there needs to be some sort of leeway about or time frame about what the reaction is of the industry where certification has been approved previously with this product. Is there a time frame for change?
I think, yeah. I think that probably comes onto our next question on change management. Would you think? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Paul, have you got anything you would add to this list in terms of competency?
No, I think what I'm interested in, I made a brief note which someone's added in for me about this industry competence committee, and I just wonder where that's going, because everything I've seen in the Fire Safety Act and the Building Safety Bill keeps saying we're coming towards this. This is going to be specified within the legislation at a later date. Particularly competence around the fire risk assessments has come out, as we know, and it's being enhanced in October, and I think the working group is looking at the Building Safety Bill and what competence will be there, particularly as one of the requirements in the accountable person is to approve the competency of any named individuals. So whether it comes through fire safety, and building safety then encompasses a lot of fire safety and the Fire Safety Act, I think it's important to get this view of what's being done in the background as well and bring that into this. So I'll go away and do that and add this in.
I think you're absolutely right, and that's obviously what we're trying to do here.
Richard, can I just jump in very quickly? One thing.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, one thing that we've encountered is, for example, I'm having an accredited person, and as you were saying, Steve, I think, and whoever. If a door needs replacing, it needs to go to an approved door supplier. So what happens if the door's not closing? So the maintenance guy comes along to try and make sure that the door is secure, because obviously it's not closing because it's dropped or whatever. They need, I'm led to believe, they need very clear instructions to ensure that when they're carrying out that maintenance before the door closes, that they don't take stuff off the bottom of the door that then damages the intumescent strip. Now, the other example that I was given was if flooring is replaced, or somebody puts a carpet in their own home, and therefore the door won't open properly. So again, they could well go and take something off the bottom of the door. Therefore, there needs to be some mechanism there whereby those checks are carried. Would that make sense? Not just about new build, is it?
Would that not come under change management, George, if there's a change being made?
Well, no, not for maintenance. I mean, you might argue that should be the case if a door closer is being replaced. I absolutely agree.
It's a change, isn't it? Yeah, I'm just trying to tie up this one.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so has anybody got anything on this question on competency? I realise it's very broad and I realise it's very contentious. Is there anything that anybody's got that they want to add into? Just as it's already added some things in, I know from you. Look at me trying to scroll up, but it's not my screen. Is there anything that anybody wants to add into this from their point of view? Or can we take that as this is as far as we can go on it?
I think let's move on very quickly to the last one because we're almost at the end of the.
Okay, I fully agree. Right, so that's number 4. Just to put up number 5. Number 5, how changes from one product to another are recorded. Change management. George?
Well, I think this is covered reasonably well by the comments that people have had. I think that what we need to do, one of the things that's missing from this, I think, is actually what I've discovered, and Steve alluded to it earlier, the specification. When I look at the MBS specification, for example, that Dowser's team would produce, the nature of the specifications are typically that they're not explicit. And that's understandable because of the way procurement is being done. But the difficulty with that, unless we end up with something that is actually an explicit specification at handover as to how that particular product is expected to perform, not that you need to go and read British Standard, this, that, and the other to be able to interpret that. In this particular context, for that particular product, doing that job in that area, then this is how that is supposed to perform. I think that's one point. And the second is we need to actually record what the product was that was actually installed. And in many cases, I'm finding that people are not recording the detail. So we've just been talking about door closers. In many cases, door closers aren't recorded. So therefore, how can you have a change management process either during the design and construction period or after that, unless you've got that evidence?
Gary. Unmute, Gary.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Richard. Yeah, no, I agree with everything that's on the screen, and I hear what George is saying. Agree with that too. I think the key thing with changes of product, the point you made about, understanding what was there and understanding what is being replaced and recording that accurately throughout. I think also linking through to competence. Who is changing that? Their competence around whatever it is, in the same way that you install. And obviously that accreditation piece that goes with competence. Also, where appropriate, evidence that the design has been referenced so that whoever has made that decision to change it is warranting that it is actually within the overall design. So not being looked at from a component perspective, but being looked at that component's role in the system.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So, Gary, just to recap, you agree with what's on the list. Would you add anything?
Yeah,
I think I'd add the bit about competence around recording who is actually replaced, so rather than the what, the who, but then also the what, and particularly if that's not like for like, I don't think that's referenced on there.
I think.
Would you do me a favour and put that in the chat?
Yeah, of course.
Would you mind? And then it just makes it easier, and then it's there in writing. Just can do it. Thank you.
Right now.
Thanks. Thank you.
The technical submittal process in construction is a well-worn way of doing that. Would it make sense for us to have the same process in asset management? Question.
Oh, sorry, Daniel. Go, Daniel.
That's right. It's just in response to a couple of the questions which have been there already. So I'll try and be as quickly as possible. The first one was to Andrew, that I don't know whether you know how the fire door industry works, but basically what you've probably got about 10 door blank manufacturers supplying to every door manufacturer into the marketplace. So even though you've got maybe 1,000 door manufacturers, they're probably only using 1 of 10 products. And what you can do is go back to the sole source, because they've done their independent testing, but they don't sell anything, they only sell door blanks. So there's an avenue there to say, have you tested this access system with this particular door blank? And if they have, you can then go to a supplier and say, if you're using this type of door blank, go and get it tested. In relation to one of Paul's questions and the removal of the door closer, and I think this is critical because I think I may know the door closer you're talking about, and it was a commercial decision. The reason being that the door closer manufacturer didn't want to pay the increase in the fees to still be part of the certification scheme. So there was nothing actually wrong with that door closer. It was more of a financial thing. So what they should have done is gone to another supplier, another certification scheme, say, can you add that in?
Okay, Daniel, but in terms of the question, I think in terms of this question, is there anything that you disagree with on the list? Is there anything you'd like to add to the list?
What I would like to add to the list is to make it mandatory or make it part of the process that the door manufacturer has to provide all the ironmongery items that are on their door set. So if something breaks, you've got a record of what to replace it with.
Right. Can I ask you could you do me a favour? Would you, as I say to the others, would you write that in the chat?
Yeah.
For me, and so just can cut and paste it, and we'll put it on the list. Because as you can appreciate, we've actually then got it down there, and it's live. Is that okay?
Well,
brilliant.
Yeah, that's fine.
Anybody else? George, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say it just might help from that example that Paul's just given. I was talking with a major insurance broker yesterday, and they were saying, I've never heard this term before, a serious loss clause. Now, this is apparently a relatively new thing that's coming into the industry, and it relates to an item that causes a loss, and if that product is actually used and it's identified as being the cause of the failure, they will only pay out once. So if you've got, for example, a product like Daniel's just been saying there with a door closer, if that door closer fails and you carry on installing those door closers, then you're not covered. And I thought that was quite significant. Steve and I have talked.
So you would need to have a record that was the case, hence it's change management.
Exactly. It's very much the case that you need to have a record. I mean, clearly you need to have a record of what's been installed. That's the whole point about the mandatory occurrence reporting. But I found it very interesting that now apparently is a new requirement everybody's that the insurers are bringing in. I'll try and find out more information about it. But I just thought it was interesting, Steve. So I know that's one of the perspectives, isn't it, that you've been looking at?
Yeah.
Okay,
so that change.
Sorry.
I was just going to say that change of product, the changing that product would not only negate the integrity of the certification, but should an event happen, you wouldn't be insured as well. The impact across that is huge potentially. Yeah. So it's a really significant point.
Yeah. Product manufacturer.
Often with a lot of these impacts, it's a question of communicating them, isn't it? People, they're there. It's there to be, and it's becoming more onerous almost daily. But it's communicating that to the relevant stakeholders so they actually understand the implications. Because I think right now they don't. I think many don't.
they need to be very, very understanding about the unintended consequences of making those decisions. The insurance market stepping in that way.
It changes the world, mate. That changes the world.
Absolutely. The only reason we got Code for Sustainable Homes all those years ago was because the insurers went, well, if the climate change is going to happen, we won't insure you unless you build this in this place.
We had a case with a contact of George's just a few weeks ago, and the guy who was head of sustainability said nobody ever spoke to me. I was just there as a placeman. We've got a sustainability director. And then suddenly he's getting calls from the FD almost daily because they're a developer. They rely on borrowing money, and the banks now have a very strict policy. And suddenly this guy had to supply all this sustainability information. The FD suddenly was on the phone every day to the sustainability guy. It's changing. And it's changing
requests on third party already. I can foresee a position where we won't be able to do stock acquisitions or swaps or disposals unless they're at a certain EPC level. And the levels of stuff I'm being asked to go back on securitization is what did that was the solar PV installer 10 years ago accredited to the right standards? Please, can you give me the evidence?
The impact is going to be huge because anything existing is automatically a huge liability because the information is not there, generally speaking.
But we need to be able to go back to a strong message to these groups to be able to say, we get that the competency has got to change. We get that the provenance of information and competence of people has got to change massively. But if you carry on down this route, the unintended consequences of it, that people will not be safer in their homes because no one will do it. Because we know one to do it.
Absolutely.
We have got an issue, and I've spoken to a couple of insurers, and you say, oh, we've got a requirement to only employ competent people, and they look at you as if you're on another planet. What you mean? You've been employing incompetent people?
Yeah.
You're like, well, no, but we haven't been able to prove it. And so it is that change, isn't it? That's happening. That the only way to prove you're competent
until proven innocent now. You've got to prove yourself innocent.
You have, but it's that retrospective activity. You know, looking at a PV install 10 years or so, did it meet this? Well, it wouldn't have done.
Yeah.
You know, 10 years ago, we thought we were the bee's knees, and we were buying door blanks and frames and getting plumbers to go around filling after their own holes as an industry.
And that's why these things really need to be. And it's not us to think through it. It's for us to be able to try and get in front of these people to say, I can't. If it's push down, pop up. Okay, get that you want all this, but you're going to end up. You're going to rewrite a different EWS1 situation all over the sector. And let's not forget, EWS1 was a mortgage provision and a lender's approach to Advice Note 14. It wasn't the output of Advice Note 14. It was the lender's interpretation. If they interpret other things in a different way and say that blocks is risky, it is really difficult.
Yeah.
Well, this is part of what we're trying to do here is make sure that what happens, or in our small way, input into those new regulations, that they're fit for purpose, and they come out of the industry rather than become imposed by a number of bods who are professional at imposing things, because they write these regulations on various and sundry different things, and they're great at and very professional at writing regulations. Unfortunately, very often, and not just in this industry, they don't know a lot about the industry, and I think that might possibly be the case here, and hopefully what we're doing will help a little.
Brilliant. Yeah, probably need to review that question before anything goes back to MHGLG again on some of the stuff that we're coming up with and proposing, because by implications of us requiring competent people, to do this type of work, we'll ask the question, well, why are you only asking for that now? So we just need to balance things.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good point. Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Believe me, before this output goes anywhere, it goes through hoops.
Because we shouldn't really be saying anything if the competency working group that's working under the sphere of the greater good come up with a different conclusion to us, then we need to obviously possibly bow to them, but we'll see.
Well, no, we are working collaboratively across the Golden Thread Initiative. We've got 11 working groups, and they in turn are also interfacing with the other MHCLG initiatives. Okay. So we're not doing this as a silo, Steve. You know, we are. I mean, what we're going to do now, I think we need to close now, because I think you know, I'm very, very grateful for everybody's time. I hope you've found it useful yourselves. What we'll now do is try and interpret, you know, this into an output, and you know, share it with you. We'll also look at the data templates side of things, and you know, if you're willing to spend, you know, if each of you are willing to spend maybe half an hour or so, maybe less, just looking at the data templates that are being compiled and seeing whether they include everything that you would want, then that would be a useful thing as well. But has anybody got any other comments to make? Sorry, Richard, I'm summing up.
No, it's fine.
So have you found it useful, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Extremely.
Excellent. Good. Well, that makes us feel a lot better, because we're volunteers as well, and you know, so we've put quite a lot into this, and we've got, you know, another 9 of these happening over the next month. So hopefully if you feel that it's been worthwhile, then, because we've got another fire safety group or fire door group on I think it's the 27th, something like that.
That's right, 27th, yeah, which you're gonna I don't know, after this one we might not need it.
Now I think we had about 15-20 people wanting to join, so that's why we've done that. Brilliant. Well, thanks very much, and I hope you all have a great weekend.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, guys.
Don't forget your sunscreen.
Really good job. Really good.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.